Yes, hello people. Welcome back to another episode of the Navvai Shift. Today I'm joined with my co-host Darnell, and today we are joined by Sophie Condie. She is the CEO of Shieldpay, and today we're going to be diving in what financial firms should know about digital transformation in 2025. We're halfway through the year, but Sophie, how are you?
I'm doing really well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. And for people that are not too familiar with yourself, could you give us a brief introduction to you and also Shieldpay?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Sophie Condie, as you just said, CEO of Shieldpay. I've been in financial services for just over 20 years. And yeah, I'm a self-professed payment geek. I love payments. They are so complicated. And I think for the typical human, payments are very simple. We move money to one another very simply. Money moves. We don't really need to think about it. We ask our banks to do things with the money, and they do it. But then as soon as you peel back that lid, there is a lot underneath it. So yeah, I find it fascinating. And one of the things I've always wanted to do in payments is make them simple. So even when I was in the corporate banks, I would always try incredibly hard with the different corporates that I worked with as a cash manager and then as a leader, was just to make the solutions as simple as possible that made sense for what their cash management needs were. And then when I moved into fintech, so I was in corporate banks for probably half of my career, so just over 10, 12 years, I guess. And then I went into fintechs about 8, 9 years ago. Since being in fintechs, again, you get to charge forwards with the simplification of payments and getting underneath the needs and the desires of the end user. But obviously the steps to get there is quite complicated. But if you can get into that and lift it back up again, you simplify it, and you can keep the money safe and make sure that the money is coming from the people who it's meant to come from and goes to the people or the companies it's meant to go to. So that's a little bit about me. Shieldpay was founded back in 2016, and it was founded through a vintage car sale going terribly wrong, and basically the owner of the vintage car being completely stitched up with the car being stolen by somebody coming to give it a test drive. And so the founder, it was a friend of the founders who this happened to, and he just really wanted to make escrows actually available to individuals. So that was where the thought of Shieldpay came from and how we were incepted. And since then, we have grown from we were founded in 2016. We got our FCA API license in 2018. And we've really focused on the security of the payments in typically the legal sector. And we've been having some fun looking at the other opportunities for our use case as well. So in essence, what our USP is that end-to-end payment journey. So we focus on the verification. So making sure, like I said, source of funds, the people, the places that the monies are coming from, right through to where the monies are going to, making sure they're the right people, making sure they're the right companies. We do the sanction checking, we do all the verification, KYC, KYB. Then we can hold the money. We can hold it for any jurisdiction, why are my words not coming to me? Any duration up to, I think it's 99 years. And then we can hold it in any currencies as well within risk appetite. And then again, we can disperse it to any jurisdiction, any value, any volume, across the globe and domestically. So our USP, like I said, is that kind of orchestration of that whole piece. So the data, the journey that money goes on. So that's us in a nutshell.
All right, I see. So Shieldpay essentially is like a one-stop shop from my understanding. But so Sophie,
Yeah.
you did touch on the payment industry being like very complex. So what
Mm-hmm.
would you say are the trends that are prompting firms to reevaluate their approach to payments?
I put some thought into this because I think, again, if you're not a payments business, but you have a payment need, not necessarily just payroll or sort of invoicing and so on, but you have a broader payment need. I think why people are needing to reevaluate this in the entire industry, and we can go into the legal industry more so, is the demand and the immediacy of the world we live in. So like I keep coming back to, you and I can send money to each other within seconds. And so why should that be any different to an organization? So you want the money moving quickly. You want that transparency. You need that you have that demand now because it is available to us. So I think that as individuals, if you're dealing with a company who's got some money is always very emotive. People want their money, but I think the demand from the consumer, whether you're B2B, the consumer, so the people are driving a harder demand in the industry, I think, and into businesses. So I think that that's a big driver. I also think the evolution and the availability of technology is a big driver. So I think, fintech's been around sort of with more gusto for the last 10, 15 years, but it's really starting to embed in our ecosystem. It all takes time. So technology and the availability of technology and specialisms is much more prevalent. And then I would also state that I think regulation's got a really big part to play. So regulation for us at Shieldpay is we genuinely, and people say this, but we do genuinely see it as an enabler to us and what we do. And I think that the regulatory horizon and the changings that have been happening, so things like APP fraud, I think that has been a massive driver for people being much more aware and alert to the impact of fraud and not managing money and moving money effectively. So I think APP fraud and confirmation of payee collectively have been a real prompt in forward thinking for firms to move beyond their basic payment rails or beyond their internal teams managing these sorts of things. So I think it's something that drives us and the need amongst businesses and fintechs to actually make changes in this space.
Yeah, nice. What does APP mean?
APP is authorized push payments. So it's the push payments, and what's been happening is there's been so much. It's where the individual is typically coerced into moving money. And so sort of you get sent links or infiltrated through cyber sort of phishing emails and so on and saying you owe money, you need to click here. And people pushing, they're pushing the payment out. So instead of people attacking, more fraudsters attacking your account, they're actually attacking you as individuals to push payments over. And there's been new regulatory releases over the last 12 months, putting more protection in place for the industry. And because it was costing banks and financial institutions a huge amount of money in reimbursement. So we need to put the protections in place across the payment industry. And so it's been quite a big movement over the last, I'm pretty sure it was embedded at the end of last year. So yeah, it's been a big shift.
Why do you think payments have historically been seen as a cost center? And what's changing that perception?
I think kind of that reality versus perception. So I think coming back to how we started the call and how we're talking, I think we all have this perception that payments are simple. And I think therefore as a business, you sort of, especially when you're starting up or if you aren't focused on payments, you're focused on your business expertise. I think the legal sector is a really, really good example of this, where the legal sector and the industry a lot of it is based on trust. So you have trust agreements all the way through. And in addition to that, the legal profession's been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, and they've moved money as part of their flows. So there's kind of been that expectation on the legal sector to do this, and therefore the legal sector and industry would look at this and be like, well, we have to do it. We're moving money, so we'll just spin up a team, or we will do that. And historically, that was quite simple. Whereas now, the availability of payments, the need for the immediacy of the payments, and then also the need and demand of the regulatory landscape is just huge. So, rightly so, that admin function has grown, and the expertise and skills within that function has grown. However, what I think is shifting is that realistic view that actually, unless you're an expert in this field, it's very complicated and it's really tough to execute, and it's risky. It's super, super risky. So I think I'll come back to, if you think about payments as they move through the ecosystem, you've got settlement systems, you have central banks, you've got payment schemes, you have a vast network of correspondent banking, you have messaging systems like the SWIFT system, you have liabilities, you have the need to net sort of net liquidity, like across the whole movement of these funds. You have the liquidity requirements and then all the regulatory requirements on top of that. And I think that shift away from being just kind of accepting of this cost center and accepting of this admin need, it's that realization and that real knowledge that it's far too complicated to perhaps just keep plugging money into it and plugging a gap, but actually being more considered in how that is approached and how that's managed. So I think that was my kind of view on it. I think if you're going to manage it internally, it's always going to be perceived as a cost. Whereas if you can be considered and purposeful in how you manage payments, and there are so many options available, I think it's still fascinating to me. I was just saying a minute ago to you guys, this week we've been part of a panel again in the legal space, and part of a big event through the week, where we're talking about how money is dispersed to claimants at the end of a very long, arduous legal journey to, for a litigation case, for example. And it's just it's almost like an afterthought. People are like, oh yeah, I'll just speak to my team. I'll speak to my finance team. So yeah, I think that the availability of options and the knowledge of options available to businesses is something that we have our work cut out still to achieve.
I can clearly see, because I mean, obviously, Sophie, you've mentioned a lot of moving parts, and I'm struggling to keep up a little bit.
Sorry, do you want me to slow it down a bit?
No, I love it. I mean, it's a lot of insight. It's great insight, so I'm not complaining at all. But I did want to touch on something that you said earlier. You was mentioning payments in the legal industry. So I did want to ask, what do you think are the most common payment-related challenges you hear from firms like the legal industry and then also the financial service space?
So I think like the payment related challenges is, I probably touched on them a little bit in my download in the last couple of questions, but I think just the manual effort that goes into executing payments, and it's typically very manual, quite antiquated, so lots of spreadsheets, and then the risk associated to all of the errors that come with that. So I think when I'm talking to prospects, clients, other leaders in this industry, and that's across both the financial services industry and the legal sector as well, in this sort of managing the movement of money, the errors cost time, effort, brand damage. We hear that a lot, because again, especially in the legal sector, some of the deals that we are involved with and support the legal industry with are such significant values of money. Some of the ones we've done, 1.9 billion to 900 people. Moving those sorts of values of money is really significant, and any error in keying that, if you're keying that and then having 4-eye checks and 6-eye checks and so on, is super tough. So the errors are very costly brand wise, and obviously from a compensation point of view, the risk associated as well to handling client monies. So there's a demand on the legal sector to manage client monies. There's actually a consultation underway at the moment with the SRA, and it closed in February. We're due a response over the next couple of months around whether their regulators, so the Solicitors Regulation Authorities, the SRA, have made it very clear in the work leading up to the consultation, during the consultation, and then even closing the consultation, their desire is that law firms do not handle client money. So it's becoming harder, more costly, more demanding for law firms to handle client money. So I think the risk associated to the client monies, and therefore, again, the cost associated to managing the monies, not just from an error standpoint, but also your resource. So again, coming back to some of the points I've made many points. The resource associated to manage these monies, it's a lot. And actually, you can repurpose this resource. It's not about making redundancies. I mean, it's up to businesses how they do this, but you can repurpose your resource into much more either revenue generative or revenue enablement use of your resource, rather than manual keying very mundane tasks that shouldn't need, so they need a lot of attention and time. But actually, if you use the right technology and you use the right third party in your payment needs, you don't need to worry about that. You can you park that resource into other areas. So I think the increased demand as well is another one that we hear frequently. But my worry is still, especially in the legal sector, and I was saying this yesterday, my worry is that payments are just such an afterthought. And it's, as I have said a lot, it's very complicated. And being an afterthought is not going to be tolerable for people, as you've gone through a massive fight anyway to get to settlement. Typically in a lot of these cases, you want that money, you need that closure, you need that dignified end to that legal journey to get the money into the rightful hands of the people whose money it is. And that's the bit that still baffles me, that is such an afterthought in the legal sector. And I imagine, it's actually typically the same across a lot of different industries, unless it's your expertise in the field that you're working in, kind of that movement of money. You just say, oh yeah, I now need to move a lot of money and move it to lots of different people. Okay, you can move it over here into another team and hope that it is executed. So yeah, I think coming back to your question and summarising, biggest challenges for the legal sector. I'd say the legal sector. So the legal sector is definitely client monies. So the management of client monies, that's the biggest challenges we're hearing, and the manual effort and error rate associated with that client money. And then I would say from a financial services standpoint, it's more the regulation change and adherence and ensuring that you're, if you think about how payment providers or anyone actually in the financial services industry, regulation is inherent and absolutely a necessity to be successful and to make sure that we're all keeping money safe and making sure that we're getting money into the right hands. I think regulation and staying on top of regulation and ahead of a regulation wherever you can, and enablement, alongside growing and innovating within your product set with technology, again, is a very tough management ask on resource and allocation of time across both of those capabilities, which is where Shieldpay, I think, definitely flourishes, because by utilizing regulation as a enabler, and therefore looking at horizon scanning as well and saying, well, what regulation is coming, and also linking that back to our roadmap and our product innovation and saying, well, how do we, align the two and make sure that we give our clients the best experience in all of this along the way? A long-winded way of answering your question, but that's all of my brain dump for you to digest.
Nice. So you literally just mentioned roadmap and customer experience. How does Shieldpay help firms move beyond just, secure transactions and move towards something that it, drives client trust and operational confidence?
I think we understand it. So I think, therefore, the understanding and honestly the deep care that we have, we are all a bunch of payment nerds, incredibly passionate about payments and how we facilitate them. We're also battle tested. So we've been around for 9 years now, and we've facilitated some of the first sort of very large mass disbursements. We've facilitated huge paying agents, escrow transactions. So I think that there is a trust for our customers when they work with us, because they know how we work. They've seen and heard from their competitors and their colleagues how Shieldpay can deliver. I think the piece that will really elevate that for the legal sector, and therefore how do you make it more than just an execution of payment, is associated to the understanding of what it is you're trying to achieve, the communication from the end to end. So making sure that you're aligned in how you're going to communicate with the end consumer or the person or the company who's going to be receiving the payments. So again, they've got a clear understanding of what is needed. So from a verification point of view, what information do we need? What can you expect? By what dates? Are things going to be closed down? You're going to be able to receive your monies. And also providing that transparency through the journey. Because one of the biggest things in payments is you send money into a system to land at an end destination, and it can be days before you have any idea where that money is. So we provide a really clear transparency on where you are in that transaction, including before the money even comes to us. We will tell you where that verification journey is, so who's wearing what's needed. Then once the money lands with us, you can see where the money is throughout that entire transaction until it is out of our ecosystem and into the end users. So I think it's that's how it elevates away from just being a secure transaction, if that makes sense, because the payment systems, they've been around for many, many years, and the need to send money either internationally or domestically is all there. It's just things that it's very functional. The schemes are very functional. They will get the job done. They don't necessarily think about the end user. So, and we think about the end user, the person and the companies that this impacts throughout, and we provide that real transparency.
I see. So it's kind of like, when you get like an Amazon package or something like that, and you can see like your driver from ABC,
Yeah,
and it's like you're like, okay, so it's coming soon, and you have that extra reassurance because you know exactly where it is. So I can
exactly.
understand.
There was that research, we can all Google it after this or whatever, but there was that research about you will wait for a train for 20 minutes if you can see that, so if you're sat waiting on the underground and you're waiting for a tube, if it says it's going to be 20 minutes, that's fine. You watch that time tick down, you're absolutely fine.
Mm.
But if you've got to wait 5 minutes, but it doesn't tell you it's 5 minutes, but you're waiting, you're not okay with that. You're just not okay with it. So I think that understanding of evidence of where something is, exactly like you said, either your Amazon package, your pizza delivery, like you just need to know where things are. Like, my pizza's in the oven now. Cool. My money's with Shieldpay. I know it's okay. So yeah, you just got to pay attention to every stage of the journey and think about what's important at every stage. Yes, the money moving is important. That's the end goal, and it's securely a secure, trusted transaction. But you have to provide that visibility, otherwise it just becomes this big black box, and then you end up with a big customer service like headache and demand that again you have to resource, and again you're having to just provide so much back and forth, and it's like a friction. My view's always been, in pretty much definitely in fintech, every fintech I've worked with, if the end person or a customer is having to ring us, we've kind of failed, because you should. So understanding who's going to be impacted by this end, the end, and not having somebody not having to ring you. If somebody has to ring us to find out where their money is or where they are in their transaction, to me, we haven't provided the best service, because in reality, you should be able to see this. You should get all the information that you need and be able to follow that and feel comfortable, and therefore have everything met early doors, have all your expectations met, and therefore you know what to expect, you know what wait time you have, you know when the money's going to land with you, and we meet those expectations. And therefore, not only is our customer, because we're Shieldpay is B2B2C, and which again is very interesting, because you can't just think, when we think about our client journey and our customer journey, rather, if we're thinking about our customer journey and we stopped at, well, our customer, the person who pays our bill, is another business, we're B2B, but we don't actually consider that end user, you fall over. You've got to think about what's important to our customers, and therefore we always think about that consumer at the end, that person who is receiving that money, because it's typically a person, or it's businesses, but they're still people within the businesses, and that we make it very human throughout.
I do find it is incredible though, because I know I can't remember the exact number of transactions you handle on a daily basis, but the fact that you can kind of provide that service consistently throughout, I just have to say that is amazing. Want to touch on something you said earlier, Sophie. You mentioned that payments are considered as like a second thought. So to ask that, why do you think firms are still underutilizing payments in general as a growth lever?
Why do I think they're being utilized? I think honestly, they're not being prioritized. So I think, especially in the legal sector, they have, they've got a business to run. They need to run their business. They need to earn revenue. They need to get fees. They need to provide their legal expertise. They need to fight the cases in court. They have so much to do to run their business, and therefore that last mile that has always kind of been catered for is just not being prioritized. So I think that for the ones we work with, and funny enough, we had one yesterday at this event I was at. It was wonderful because one of our clients was there, and it's our client who we've really grown with. And I love sharing our stories because there's been, late nights, very manual, arduous processes that, when we first started out doing this back in 2021, the large dispute kind of payouts, you're learning and you need to learn together. You need to be open, honest, manage those sort of incidents as they occur, because I can assure everyone it's not if something breaks, it's when it breaks. And having a really robust incident management process and an SRE, site reliability and kind of ethos will really enable you to make sure that you can manage things effectively as you move forward. So I think where I'm going with this is when you're thinking about payments, if you use a tried and tested provider specialist for payments, you don't need to go through all of those problems. You don't need to kind of test and learn all the way through. I think the reason, do I understand why people aren't prioritizing it? I think I get stuck on that, speaking really openly. I sort of sit there and get really perplexed as to why isn't it a big enough problem yet? They say, don't they, that the problem, the pain needs to be really significant to prioritize it. And I think there's a lot of delaying tactics. It's because it can be complicated. And I think that they have this view, or some people can have, or some clients can have this view that it's kind of a one and done. So we need on the 1st of July, we will now never do a payment through a client account. We will only use a third party. Whereas actually, it's much more beneficial to be iterative in your approach. So when we work with law firms, for example, we offer different ways of working with us. So you can have an API integration, yes, and that is pretty finite, as in once you do an API integration, you will want to plug all your payments through it because it's super straightforward. But you can still do your API integration and you can just test and learn as you go through. We have a portal available as well, so people can log on and use a payment account with us, or known in legal industry as a third party managed account. You manage that via a portal. And then also you can reach out to us and we will provide you a service. So there's multiple ways of working with us, but doesn't have to be on this date, we switch from this to this. What you can do is say, okay, well, what we're going to do over this month is test you and utilize a new capability. And this is what we're going to test. And these will be our measures of success. And then if that works, we move on to the next, piece and take it forward. So I think there's a prioritization piece and kind of a complacency that it's kind of always worked. So, we'll just carry on letting it work. It works to a degree. And then I would say that it's, I think there is a desire to do this big bang is kind of a linear, a line in the sand, whereas actually you just don't need to do that. It can be iterative where you test and you iterate, Is this serving the need that we have? Is it cost effective? Is it a better experience for my client? So thinking about what's important, but again, it kind of comes back to that prioritization. They need to prioritize and be considered in that approach.
Yeah. If our co-founder was on the call, he would have said right after, he would have said, what I'm going to say right now is, if it's not broken, don't fix it.
Exactly. Yeah. So we've got a big tsunami of settlements coming in the group litigation space and also the CAT, so the class action lawsuits. And one of them is a diesel emission scandal, which is the same. The VW one settled a few years ago. There's more brands of cars that are going through this. And then also there was the PCP, which is a car purchase scheme as well, and that one's there's millions of eligible claimants for these, and I think that's going to be the straw that can break the camel's back. For me, we're ready. We're totally ready. Like we can facilitate all of this. It's just our customers and our prospects prioritizing it. So if it's not broke, don't fix it. It may not be broke today, but you've got millions and millions of payments coming up. How are you going to do this? And we're here to help. Like, don't think I'm out there to just sell. There are options available to you, but please be ready. Is probably my biggest ask.
Nice. You said something. You said pay needs to be the issue to prioritize it. Kind of like that.
Yeah,
Kind of like that. That's my takeaway so far.
it's really true. And we saw it when there was a VW emission scandal that was settled back in, I think it was a couple of years ago now. And we were talking to lots of customers about it for a long time, and for months and months, and they were like, yeah, yeah, yep, yep, yep. And then it settled, and we had like 7 clients just contract within a day, and then the outreach to us was insane. But I think if people can be a bit more prepared, your experience will be so much better, because you can do things like integration, or you can make decisions with time on side. It's when you're in a rush and you suddenly need to pay out loads of people and loads of money. It just makes things very tough, and also you're squeezing resource. So we're a fintech startup. We're a team of 75 people, and we've got multiple clients. We have BAU already. We're a live capability, so our resource will be finite as well as everybody else's. So it's getting ahead of this, and just being more purposeful and intentful in what's next for you as a business, and lifting up. I think that's one of the hardest things as a business, somebody running a business, either business owners or businesses in any walk of industry, is lifting your head up and going, what's coming? Are we ready for it? What do I need to now prioritize to make sure that we get there?
Nice. I've been dying to ask, but we've seen that many businesses are feeling the cost pressures from like compliance costs to employer contributions, like national insurance. Have these types of increases had any impact on how Shieldpay approach efficiency or internal scaling?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So we and again, I think there's been a big shift in fintech, particularly. So if you think 5-6 years ago, maybe a bit longer actually, it was probably just a little bit pre-COVID, and then post-COVID for a little while. It was money was being thrown from investors into fintech. It was just such a growth area with real belief, and have what you need, just fundraise again. You can fundraise again. Go 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 go. And then around probably 18 months ago, 2 years ago, that flipped very quickly to being, why aren't you profitable? And it was a big shift, and it's obviously taking time to bed in. But again, you have to shift that mindset as a business, because you can't be funded anymore. You need to be independent. And so certainly for us, the cost pressures of running a business being much more focused and aligned. We went through quite a large restructure in August last year, and made some very purposeful cost decisions. Now we work incredibly hard, and it's something I'm really passionate about. And I know it sounds a little bit, I don't know what it sounds like actually. I treat it not dissimilar to how I treat my own life. I have a set of funding in my life and my family and my home, and we know how much we will be bringing into the home, and we need to budget accordingly. So it's exactly the same with a business. We know how much roughly we can spend every month. We know roughly how much we will earn every month, and there'll be peaks and troughs to all of these things. And it's that very considered approach to managing that in a really effective way. So I think that I've always been a very considered person. Any decision I make or any optionality I think about, I'm always considering impacts or ROI, or the benefit of doing something, and then the impact if you chose to prioritize this piece, what then happens to all the other things that you're deciding against or with. So we've really embedded that ethos, and it's not just me, it's the exec as a team. It then goes down into the leadership team within the business, and then into the people. Whenever anyone's like, oh, can we have this? I'm like, cool, you can, but we know how much we can spend. So what has to give? What has to move? Or is there a ROI on that we have available to us? So I do think that costs are a big thing. They should always be a big thing for a business. Managing costs, managing revenue, it's very simple. You get to spend what you bring in, really, and then you get to choose how you invest into the business and into the growth areas to where you need to be. But yeah, I think it's just relentless, isn't it? Life for all of us, there's always something that changes, and therefore you need to just lift up, think, be considered, and be purposeful in what you do.
I guess that's the double-edged sword of being a CEO. Because yes, I guess there's so many choices and you have to weigh up the options. So I can imagine, Sophie, you must be going through or you must have a difficult life at times.
It
What's-
is tough, yeah. But you just have to keep talking and communicating and
Because I guess obviously if you communicate to your staff and obviously you bring them in their decisions and consider their opinions, then I guess that's all you can hope for, really.
yeah.
On the topic of, I don't know, decision making, I wanted to know, like, what are you most excited for as you look forward, Shieldpay's next phase of like growth and impact?
I think it's a lovely story. I honestly believe, for me personally, so I've been with Shieldpay coming up 4 years. I suppose it's coming up 4 years. It's September, that far away. I think for me is independence. So again, like I said, we've really shifted as a business our mindset. Um, I think as a fintech and as a startup, there's so and actually, you know what? Because Shieldpay and what we do, that verify, hold, and disperse, there's so many use cases for it. So you could point that in insurance, in the insurance industry. You could point that at real estate. There's lots of different industries that you can point what Shieldpay does at, and it's been a blessing and a curse, because I think you can dilute your market share or your focus if you try and spread yourselves too thin. So for me, we've been really razor focused on the legal sector, and that's where I want us to remain. I think we've still got such a huge opportunity. And for me, I've really started to see that shift this year around Shieldpay becoming less of a transactor for the law firms and becoming much more of a trusted partner and embedded in the ecosystem of the law firms. We're still really early in that journey, though, and the legal sector. So, I mean, the legal sector transacts trillions. Like, it's insane how much money moves across the legal industry. And so the opportunity that we're part of is insane, and we're still kind of just tickling it, and it's about us embedding that. So there's two parts from a business perspective. So if I think about how Shieldpay is attacking the next chapter, being incredibly considered, focusing direction and being intentful in what we deliver, and that independence of being profitable and being able to drive it forward with the things that we want to do to take Shieldpay forward. That excites me the most. And then the second piece is just that real value add to our client base, and not being transactional. I think when you work transactionally, it's the relationship's missing, the understanding's missing, the actual real value add by understanding a client's needs in the movement of money. That's where you really add the value. So those are the bits that I'm super excited about.
Yeah, nice. We tend to go off that ethos as well. We tend to provide value first before anything.
Yeah, I like that.
Opens up the door a lot more.
One to have.
Well, Sophie, I wanted to say thank you so much for your time. This episode has
Thanks for having me.
This episode has been absolutely amazing. There's been quite a lot of takeaways. Darnell, anything from your side, my co-host?
Just literally the same, Sophie. Honestly, we appreciate the insights. I think I'm gonna have to watch this podcast. It give you time to take everything in, because you did.
Sorry.
No, it's brilliant. We love it. Just a lot of gems, and I'm sure our viewers are gonna be very happy.
Where can our viewers find you, Sophie? Where would be the best place?
We have our website, so shieldpay.com, or you have LinkedIn as well, so we can link in if there's anything you want to talk about payment wise. I mean, you can tell. You'll lose me in payments for a while. I'll talk about it for days. But also businesses. I love businesses, always have done. And I think it's all about your network. It's all about growing your network, talking to one another, finding out what's working for each other, helping one another along the way.
Well, Sophie, thank you so much. Thank you again. And
Thanks
guys,
for having me.
that's been another episode of the Navvai Shift.